when we founded Seqster, we didn't think Seqster was going to become law. Just think about that. How many companies and how many founders have you spoken to that, came up and created some sort of technology that became law? It's incredible.
Cash flow. Cash flow. Did you clear your cash flow?
So, Ardy, I'm going to do a quick intro for the listeners here. So we were up in Midtown Manhattan a couple weeks ago getting pizza, and our conversation was, when we decided to do this episode, we were talking everything from the future of healthcare to music to life to, travel, kind of everything, philosophy. It was an awesome conversation. I wish we could have just recorded that and made that the episode. But just a quick intro for you. So you are the founder and CEO of Seqster. You guys are building the future of healthcare data interoperability for both the end patients to have their own data in their pocket on their phone, as well as some B2B applications. So if you want to fill in the gaps of anything I missed there on the introduction, and then let's just kind of dive into this the show here.
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me. And I wish we could have had someone, video recording us while we were walking to 33rd and Lexington, where Vezzo, the best pizza in the world, I would say, is.
Nice plug for Vezzo.
Yeah, look, I guess we get to tell everyone the story on your wonderful podcast. So thanks again for having me. We started Seqster in 2016, and it was all about putting the person, the patient, at the center of all their healthcare data, in order to break down those data silos, whether it was their provider data, their genomic data, their wearable data, their remote patient monitoring data. And really what we do is we create a longitudinal health record in real time for both patients and for researchers, such as pharma companies that are running clinical trials and clinical studies, in order to fast track and advance drug development.
So when you say longitudinal, is that like a timeline, like a history of healthcare events, or can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, since the moment you're born, you have data on you, right? Even when you're a fetus, I guess you could say, right? Depending on what tests your mom has, right? And so that moment to the moment that you unfortunately pass away and leave this earth, there's a lot of data, right? And a lot of us obviously are fortunate enough to, be born healthy. Some of us have certain genetic diseases that we're born with that we don't actually get to see until later. And that longitudinal data is very important for various different research in order to have the right treatments for the cohorts that are running those experiments, right? And I think with Seqster, how we've really changed the dynamic on this is that it's not static data and it's in real time. And so if Brian goes and gets an intervention or a lab done, or something happens, I don't know, you get cancer, you get some sort of skin disease or whatever happens, and you go see a specialist. I'm just, saying just random events there. That data would come in real time with you sharing it via your consent to the researcher on the pharma side in order to make better medicine for us. And this is where we really realized health data is medicine.
Yeah, I love that. So and I love that slogan. You talked about how that's kind of like the philosophy, or even sort of like the mission of Seqster, like health data being part of the cure, and literally being medicine. And there's a lot of stuff you just touched on. I love the concept of kind of empowering both ends of the equation, the patient themselves, giving them something that's useful so that they can have ownership of their data, and they can see it and understand it and see the trajectory over time, but then also using that same data to give the researchers, the drug makers, the biotech, life science folks what they need to do better in creating treatments and new innovations in the healthcare space. There's a couple of things that you like slightly alluded to in what you just described, and you talked about it slightly when we met as well. And I want to dive into it more because it's really interesting. Before Seqster, so I think you mentioned you had a company that was like genetic sequencing, and that was part of like where the name Seqster came from. I want to get into kind of like
Yeah.
where you come from and where the name comes from, and why you're wearing that hat and hoodie.
Sure. So a couple things. Look, yeah, before Seqster spent 15 years in DNA sequencing and taking really DNA sequencing technologies to the clinic. And my team and I were fortunate enough to be around some amazing scientists that were innovating next-gen sequencing technologies so that you can actually run genome sequencing and exome sequencing. And we came up with and invented various different clinical diagnostic tests that detected, breast cancer, such as BRCA1 and BRCA2, known as the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, and various different, other cancer-associated genes by just running just one test from one blood sample. And
so this was to like identify predispositions ahead of time and help patients understand what they might have in the future. Is that?
Yeah, because with cancer, you either have hereditary cancer or you have somatic cancer. And, 5% or so of cancer is hereditary. And so we actually came up with the actual clinical diagnostic test that would detect that. And if you were positive on one of those genes, then depending on the gene that was showing up within your genome, you would have an 85% chance, unfortunately, in developing, let's say, breast cancer. And so you can actually get treatment and go get a mastectomy done to save your life. And that sort of testing led us to looking at how we can augment all the other data. So, our name Seqster really came from me being a Napster user and wanting to create the Napster of healthcare. And, the SEQ is from our sequencing backgrounds, but it transformed through our journey at Seqster to seeking health data, SEEKING. But our mission and our vision with Seqster has never changed since the first day that we founded the company. And I think that's what's so amazing. If you look at so many different other startups, whether they raised $1 or $1 billion, they've changed and pivoted 50 times in order to find their business model. We never did. We stayed true to the mission of, everyone is a Seqster because everyone is seeking health data. It doesn't matter if you're a patient, a provider, a pharma company, a payer, a parent, whatever that may be. I call it the 5 Ps, right? I think I just listed them. But for us, those are the 5 Ps of healthcare. And Seqster is the underlying technology that makes all the magic happen so that a patient can quickly bring all their data in one place. And at the same time, you mentioned it, what gets really interesting is how we enable real world data and real world evidence for the researchers so that they can find faster and better cures and treatments and drug developments and advancements with the data. Because the hardest thing in any clinical trial or in healthcare in general is actually getting patient data and getting the right data at the right given time. And we solve all those problems with just an incredible software that puts the patient in the power and in the driver's seat. as well as allows them to share that power with the researcher. And so you save, hundreds of millions of dollars for a drug being developed, as well as years in obtaining data on data that, those researchers and the pharma companies and the CROs were never able to actually get. Or if they were able to get it, not only did it cost them so much money, but it took them so much time.
It's so important. I mean, it's there's so many specialists out there in healthcare. Obviously, the human body is so complex that, it's all of medicine can't possibly understand everything, at this trajectory of human civilization and evolution. But, it's, for the specialists, like they're so focused on their area, and they sometimes they know the thing they know. Like you go to, an endodontist and they know how to do root canals, or you go to an ENT and they know the ears and the throat and the nose and that sort of thing. But they don't understand, they don't always see the big picture of healthcare and, or the big picture of your body. And, so as the patient, you truly have to be your own, CEO of your health. You have to take ownership of your own health and not necessarily just depend on what anybody says. You have to question what people say, and you have to be able to, over time, kind of create correlations and know what questions to ask and know what information to share and when. And it's difficult, especially kind of pre what Seqster's doing, when everything lived in an EMR or an EHR system. It's difficult as a patient to get access. Maybe you have a filing cabinet full of DVDs that have images on them and printouts of over time, and if you want to go figure out your history, you got to go dig through your filing cabinet. And I'm sure 99% of people aren't that organized with their health information. So,
and not only that, a lot of the times it's the fact that you're moving around, or you've had data from what we call retrospective data that you don't have even access to. And if you did have access to, then you are able to give a 360-degree view of that patient. And that helps solve so many other problems within healthcare as well. It really is the number one problem in healthcare. Any use case that anyone is discussing, whether it's going to be, this coming up week at the HLTH Health Conference in Vegas, which is the biggest conference for the future of healthcare. I mean, Seqster enables and can enable the entire ecosystem. And that's because the data itself is the electricity that lights up all the, bulbs that need to, do their thing, I guess you could say.
So I got a question for you, and it's short question, then I'm leading somewhere with it. What year was Seqster founded?
2016.
2016, and what was it? 2017 or 2018 when the regulations came out? What year was that?
So the regulations actually were coming during, a couple of years after that, around 2018, but they weren't finalized. That's the 21st Century's Cures Act.
Yeah,
and
that's what
we happened to be working with Seema Verma and Don Rucker and their teams at HMS and also CMS at the time. And Seqster was used as the actual example in drafting those rules. And then those rules dropped in 2020, but because of the pandemic, it got delayed till actually 2021. And as of October 6th of 2021, or actually of 2022 now, you'll be given a penalty if you're a provider that's not giving access to data. But again, those 21st Century Cures Act and interoperability, CMS ONC interoperability rulings were all about patient access. It wasn't about patient ownership of data. And so with Seqster, we're even ahead of that, right?
Yeah, and that was the point I was going to make.
Of the patient owning the data.
Yeah, you guys were 2 years early to the scene. There's all these companies that are popping up trying to do what you guys are doing. Because the law hits. So they're all right, it's a law now. There's a business market. There's an opportunity here because everyone needs to do this. It's kind of like SOC 2 or HIPAA compliance, like the security firms pop up around the
Exactly.
framework.
It's actually better than that. And I'll tell you why. Because when we founded Seqster, we didn't think Seqster was going to become law. Just
I
think
love
about
that.
that. How many companies and how many founders have you spoken to that, came up and created some sort of technology that became law? It's incredible.
That's
We didn't know
such
that.
that just like blew my mind thinking about that. Like when you said that, the impact of what you were saying, I could like feel that through my spine. Just like starting a company because you have such a vision of what the future needs to be, and your vision was like so clear years ahead of these regulations that have literally been written into law for the good of the population. That is such an amazing.
It blows my mind. I mean, it really does. And I think that's why, look, we've been doing this for 7 years. We spent 75,000 hours on this incredible problem. And we have marquee clients that are utilizing our operating system. So at the end of the day, from founding Seqster to all the great things that have happened in the whole journey of Seqster overall, I mean, what's incredible is that we were somehow able to stay alive and get real customers to utilize our operating system so that they can make their business and their clients happier and better. And it's the first time that patients get something back, like you said. They never did. You'd be in a clinical trial and you wouldn't get anything back. You actually get a SaaS platform for free.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's a third market you guys have too. So there's like the researchers, there's the patients, and what's the third one?
Yeah, so it's pretty much the same. We created the direct-to-consumer product first, right? And you have to have a lot of marketing dollars in order to go out to the consumer. But I would say, pivot only in the entire history of Seqster has been to pivot to B2B. And our B2B pivots was really successful because we started with the consumer, we started with the patient first. We built something for the real end user. And then we had pharma come and invest in us. And then they built our admin portal, our research portal. And then that gets utilized by all the researchers, let's say at Takeda or Boehringer Ingelheim or AbbVie or whoever's partnered with us. And then their patients are the ones that onboard on that white label of Seqster, where we're the operating system for that enterprise, whether that may be their patient registry, whether that may be, something particular to their health economics outcomes research, or it may be some use case related to post-market surveillance. But it's not limiting to just pharma and clinical trials. From the payer segments, we are getting an influx and inbound of requests. And I think, like anything, it just takes time to show one use case, one segment success so that you can move on to the next. The beauty of our product, though, is the fact that it is so universal. Whether it's a pharma company, a payer, or a provider, or let's say some big consumer brand that wants to launch a digital health initiative tomorrow to all their employees, it takes us 5 business days to set up their instance, right? It takes us 5 business days to give them a fully white label branded version of Seqster that would be customized for their patients, for their users, for their members. That's what's so incredible about what I think the team has accomplished at Seqster. It
takes longer for the contract to get through legal, I'm sure.
Yeah, and you know what's so funny? It takes longer to get one patient record than launching Seqster and getting 10,000 patient records. Just think about the impact that
Yeah,
this
that's
technology can do for your family and mine and everyone else. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. We're so in love with just helping not only the industry move forward, but we help patients. We've saved lives with this, operating system. And for me, that is the biggest accomplishment I think the Seqster, brand and the Seqster team has been able to do. We've built a legacy already by being able to save lives with our platform, and that's what's really amazing, I think.
You were sharing some of those stories with me over lunch. Do you have any stories that like really stand out from patients that just I'll let you tell whatever kind of like stands out the most to you.
Yeah, I'll give a personal one, right? I think personal always wins. And, unfortunately, my dad was hit with colon cancer. We didn't know that it was colon cancer to begin with until we grinded through his data. We were able to run a tumor board in 6 hours, get his data to multiple different pathologists, and we are able to bring his Cologuard results, which is a genetic DNA test, as well as some other lab results, and then share it with his specialist and provider that was trying to get him into surgery in weeks. And instead, we got him into surgery in 5 days. And that's because of care coordination. That's because of the data that we had access to. That's because of the tumor board we ran with specialists. And, what was amazing about that is our team at Seqster actually saved my dad's life.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. And he dodged a bullet. Why and how? Maybe the audience is thinking, how did you guys save his life? Well, if anyone knows anything about cancer, every single minute counts. And if my dad would have gone into surgery 6 to 7 weeks out because of, insurance approvals, and that's what the provider wanted to do based off of his diagnoses, and us not having access to Seqster and pushing the provider on the data that shows that he should go to surgery sooner, he would have gotten, colon cancer stage 3 instead of 2A, which could have metastasized, and he would have had much, much, more trouble than he already did being a colon cancer patient. But, he was able to get back on his feet, get back to work after a month. And that's when we realized that health data is medicine. And that's when we realized that the time to intervention is so important. And that can be a difference of life or death.
I just had like this epiphany. When you said health data is medicine earlier, it hit me in like a logical way, almost like it makes sense kind of way. But when you just said it after that story, it hit me in an emotional way.
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone has their own stories. I'm sure you and your family have your own stories that you can relate to with the use cases and the examples that I'm sharing about Seqster. And I think that's what's so special. We can sit down and talk to anyone about Seqster. It could be the president of the United States to, a person that just got diagnosed with some sort of rare disease, to a parent, to, Jeff Bezos, to Bill Gates. It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter what your demographic is. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are. At the end of the day, the most important thing in the world is your health is your wealth. And we've created a technology that can not only advance that for populations, but also families.
Yeah, I love that. What have you guys done? Have you guys looked into anything in, like IBM Watson or, OpenAI or any of these machine learning, APIs that give you access to like predictive health analytics or, predictive, diagnoses or I don't know what the right terminology is. Have you looked at any of those kind of platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually looked at all of them. And what's so great about Seqster is because it's an operating system and we have different modules that we can launch, whether that's ePro for patient reported outcomes, or a search query to search the comorbidities of data associated with one patient versus another, or patient matching for a clinical trial. You're talking about layering in, various different analytics or AI or machine learning for decision making. And
Exactly. Yep.
we can do that. That's not what our expertise is, but we do bring, and we do have NLP for natural language processing on the data, and taking, let's say, OCR from the free text and doctor's notes and things like that. So there's lots of different use cases for those things. And if our, customer wants to bring in IBM Watson or some other, type of AI analytics layer on top of the Seqster operating system, they're completely able to. And that's how we've kind of built it. Think of, your Microsoft Windows or your Mac OS. That AI is just another application that sits on top of your operating system. We built the operating system so you can actually take other technologies and plug them in on top of ours as well.
Yeah, that's cool. So is it the Seqster operating system, is that a web application that these researchers will interface with, or is it some sort of like an actual, running on bare metal? Or
yeah, it's web-based, but we also have mobile as well, and we have SDKs for iOS and also Android both.
Cool.
Right? But you have to think of it from a business standpoint. It really depends on, the population as well as the researchers on what they want to use. On a desktop version, they're able to actually really grind through the data much more than on a mobile version. But if they want quick access to, some report or something, then, it's great to have, mobile as well. And we have both. But from the patient side, the data visualization is always better on a desktop version versus a mobile version. But on the mobile side, it's easier and quicker to onboard, right? And so they have pluses and advantages and disadvantages. It just depends on the use case and the customer.
Yeah. So taking a left turn here. So like most SaaS companies are tracking things like CAC, like customer acquisition costs, month over month MRR, return on ad spend, things like that, like things that are more transactional. What are the KPIs that Seqster tracks? How do you guys, kind of quantify the business and figure out, where it's going?
Yeah, a couple things. I think it starts with actually deployments of our operating system to, let's say, a pharma company, right? And right now we have 4 major deployments with, 4 out of the top 15 pharma companies in the world. For a company our size and at our stage, that's pretty incredible. And that's because the system is so robust and it solves a really big problem. We also have a very large pipeline of interest from various different, biotech companies, from small to medium, as well as other pharma companies that are interested too. It just depends on their use cases, and it's a timing thing. But really, how we measure success is, how quickly we can get to a deployment. Because the faster we can get to a deployment, then we can measure success on how many patients are being onboarded, how many people are connecting their data, what type of data they are connecting, right? And at the end of the day, what is the actual result on the real world evidence side if they're running, different RWE studies.
What's an RWE study?
So, because we bring real world data, together in one place. And real world data is really the data that exists on Brian, on Jennifer, on whoever, right? At the end of the day, you bring your, Stanford data, your Memorial Sloan Kettering data, you bring your Garmin data, you bring your Medtronic data, you bring your Dexcom, blood glucose monitoring device data. That's real world data that a researcher at the far end does not have access to, right? That's data that's being siloed. And so within literally less than 60 seconds, sometimes milliseconds, depending on the data points and how much data you have, you aggregate that data and then you're able to share it in this operating system with Roche Diagnostics, with Pfizer, with AstraZeneca, whoever that may be, that we are doing business with, right? And at the end of the day, you are contributing to a real world evidence study where they're able to look at 1,000 individuals with all this data that they weren't having access to before, and they're able to run their analytics and see what are those touch points and what is the needle in this haystack within that cohort, as an example.
Yeah, interesting. I'll show you. I'm sure you've seen the Aura rings.
Yeah.
Hold it up to the camera for anybody watching the video. It's a really cool biometric sleep tracker, and they've been out pre-COVID, but they were actually able to predict COVID. I think through the pandemic, they ran a study, and they were able to predict COVID like 2 days or 3 days before you'd start testing positive or have symptoms based on
because of certain
early
markers, that's showing up within that data point. And that's a great example that if, let's say, Pfizer was running that study and was handing out O-rings to folks, and then they were using Seqster for the collection of the EMR data plus the O-rings, that's a perfect real world evidence study right there.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I participated in the study, and they were like taking my data for like 9 months or 12 months or something. And I did have COVID during that time period. So they were able to catch it. And they, every day I'd fill out the survey and say, I don't have COVID today, or, I'm not coughing, I don't have a fever, fill out their survey every day. And it was really interesting. And then they published the results of the study after. So it was, obviously a lot of it was over my head, but
yeah, what's nice about the ring too is that you can always have it on. Some people don't want to have, a wearable watch on while you sleep. And the battery life is pretty good on that.
Yeah. That's cool. So what's next for Seqster? You guys have the the patient mobile apps that empower patients to have access to and be able to manage their historical healthcare data, the longitudinal data, as you said. There's the research side of Seqster. What's the next stage of Seqster?
Yeah, look, we have an incredible product roadmap that I can't really share publicly, but what I can share is that our customers are really figuring out how to leverage our operating system to impact patient lives at scale. And I think this was something that was maybe a dream before, and people maybe didn't think that we could do that. But you have to understand, we have nearly 100% coverage of all of the major health systems in the United States, as well as the small doctors' offices and clinics. Any data that has been digitized, ladies and gentlemen, our incredible technology can quickly, rapidly aggregate that data, visualize that data, and then share it in a fully HIPAA compliant, high trust certified, 21 CFR Part 11 FDA compliance, CMS ONC interoperability, 21st century Cures Act compliant way. I mean, that in itself is a great feat. And so I think now that we've figured out how it can really impact both the patients and researchers, we're focusing a lot around patient engagement now, right? And we're focusing a lot around other use cases that we just did not think were possible. And there's a lot of analytic companies that are interested in Seqster that we never thought would be before, as well as, like I said, payers. And I think
Payers seems like an obvious one.
it's an obvious one, and it's a real obvious one when you have like payer pharma, right? And there's a lot of use cases like that as well. In 2023, I predict will be the year that people will actually say, "Oh my God, did you run a Seqster trial instead of a clinical trial?"
Yeah, that's cool. And payers, I think, is interesting because it's like, they're trying to lower their costs, obviously. So if you can embed the incentive to the patient somehow into the experience, so not only do they get the incentive, but they get their data at the same time, and it's somehow beneficial to the payer, they're saving money. That's like a no-brainer to me, for the payers.
Absolutely. And I think one key thing to realize is that there's a lot of API plays out there, a lot of people trying to do what we're doing,
to build their own stuff on top of Seqster.
Yeah, and we're not an API play. We invented the patient-facing application and the research-facing application so that you can do lots beyond our imagination with it.
But you guys have APIs though, right? So people can hook into your APIs if they want to. You're not API first, but
absolutely. We have a dev portal for that. We have that. So, but at the end of the day, the fact that we can white label this for XYZ companies, that is really our business.
Cool. So you're saying, a whole bunch of technical terms and acronyms, a couple of minutes ago that I, didn't understand half of them. Kind of like describing all the things, compliance and technical stuff. I heard data interoperability at the end. I get that one. It reminded me, have you ever seen, I'm sure you have, Silicon Valley, that show on HBO?
Yes. I used to watch it when I had time.
Well, I think it was the first episode. They had that startup up on stage, like the party where Kid Rock was there.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we're making the world a better place through, abstracted development, no code, software solutions. And it was funny because everyone says that in Silicon Valley, like, yeah, we're making the world a better place through, blah, 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 whatever, our infrastructure as a code layer.
Right.
But you guys literally are making the world a better place. And it was like, as you were saying, all those like long acronyms and, technical terms, I'm thinking of that scene from Silicon Valley when they were up on stage doing that. And then the funny part is kind of like, it's actually true here. You're actually doing it.
Yeah. And, I think a lot of people probably relate to the show. A lot of people, hear this all the time. And it's crazy. We are actually doing it, right? And I think a majority of people still don't believe it. And that's actually our secret sauce. Our secret sauce is that people think that we can't do it. And then they try it, and then they see it, and then they, launch it to 50,000 individuals. And then they're like, oh my God, why didn't we have this 5 years ago? Right. And so I think that's what's really interesting with what I'm seeing from my end is that from disbelief to kind of believing to, oh shit, we needed this yesterday.
Yeah. And like verbing your business, like people say Google, if you want to search something, you go Google it. My phone.
Exactly. Yeah.
To me
and
here.
I think with Seqster, it's like that. Like I said, everyone's a Seqster.
Yeah, but like that's like verbing
whether you believe
business.
it or not, you are a Seqster.
Yeah, but the thing you said a minute ago, though, the Seqster trials, like making, you're not doing a clinical trial, you're doing a Seqster trial.
Yeah, because clinical trials were yesterday's business. Tomorrow's business are Seqster trials or Seqster studies instead of clinical studies. We truly believe that. And the difference is Seqster brings platinum data versus a regular clinical trial that brings copper data. Copper still has its worth, but it ain't platinum.
So, I think we can start wrapping up in a little bit, but I'm curious, like, where do you see trends in healthcare going? Like, what is the next, you talked about the next year. What is the next 5 years? What does the next 10 years look like? How are things going to evolve in healthcare?
Yeah, I think the world is looking for a Netflix, Amazon type of experience within healthcare, within health data. And I can see in the next 5 years to 10 years, Seqster can be, a technology that plays into advancing that for everyone. And we're doing a lot with pharma. We're doing a lot within clinical trials and clinical studies that are becoming Seqster trials and Seqster studies. But at the end of the day, those are just proof points. But yes, it's a great business. Yes, it's a great way to get your technology in the hands of both researchers and patients. But I do believe that the big, vision behind this is that Amazon Netflix experience where, you have one click and you have all your movies in one place and you can, watch any movie you want through Netflix basically, right? Or Apple TV or whatever you're using. But at the end of the day, with health, you don't have that because everything's been siloed. And if you go back to the Napster days, we wouldn't be here and it wouldn't be called Seqster. There would be no Seqster if I wasn't a diehard Napster user. And so Napster and Sean Parker get all the credit, for the Seqster name. And the reason being is because, we wanted to have all our music in one place. And if there was no Napster, there would never been an iTunes. MP3s would have never taken off and all that other good stuff, right? And so I think Seqster's on something 1,000x bigger than that can change the way consumers and patients not only interact with data, but how they get care.
Yeah, interesting. And I've seen, you brought up Amazon, so I want to touch on that too. We've seen Amazon and Walmart are kind of like quietly moving into healthcare and like filing patents. I saw Walmart filed a patent last year on, people talking about like putting healthcare data on the blockchain. I think that's kind of a goofy idea sometimes, but like they filed a patent for that. Amazon's been doing stuff in the healthcare space kind of quietly. What have you seen? Like, are they innovators? Are they just too big to innovate in the space? What are you seeing there?
Well, they definitely have, some might. No one can argue that. But if you look at, the recent, let's say, acquisitions such as One Medical, right? Imagine plugging in Seqster inside their One Medical acquisition, and what does that do for their business, and what does that do for the providers? What does that do for their patients? Right? Overnight, it's like a supercharger that's put on their engine. So I think there's lots of synergies there. There's a lot of missing pieces as well. And I'm sure they know that too. But I think a lot of people are going after various different segments in healthcare because they think one is maybe easier than the other, because healthcare is really complex and everyone's finally understanding how complex it is. But how you are successful in healthcare is that you don't just maybe purchase one technology. You look at the overall landscape and you see how you can connect the dots. And at the end of the day, if a data play is not part of that discussion or, future, I don't think you will be successful. The data discussion has to come at some point. And so I think, at the end of the day, we're here to just help any small, big company with those initiatives. I do think that a lot of these bigger companies like Amazon and CVS and Walmart and others, they see a tremendous revenue opportunity in healthcare. And that's why they are all, racing to see where they can fit, right? But they are too big to innovate. They're not too big to take innovation and implement based off of some acquisitions that they're putting together. I think that's probably their best, bet.
Yeah, that's a good segue there. What's the vision for Seqster? Is it like a strategic exit, or do you see yourselves getting to a multi-billion-dollar market cap and just, changing the way that everything's done?
I'll be honest with you. When we started Seqster, as you know, and we talked about this when we went to New York City, we didn't have a business model, right? And that's why we've been able to build something that people like yourself and others just love. And that's because we built it with purpose and passion, right? And so at the end of the day, we've never thought about how, a business model could work. We just built something phenomenal and we let the business come to us. And then if we had to pivot a little bit from consumer to B to B to C, that's all we really did. But we didn't re-engineer anything. And at the end of the day, we utilized both patients and our customers to build our system. We're not raising our hand and saying that we know, everything from here to the under the sun. But yes, were we visionary? Absolutely. You can see the track of the company. We're definitely visionary on what it was. It just took a long time. Where we want to take it next is, no answer as well either, because we just want to make sure that our clients are happy. We want to make sure that we're growing. And at the end of the day, if that means that it will be, 4 different ways that there's an exit, whether that's an IPO or whether that's an acquisition or whether that's, we just self-sustain and keep this going privately, right? I think all options are on the table really for us. And they've always been. We never built actually the business to actually sell it. We actually built it so that the data and the technology can work hand in hand together and not be siloed. The last thing we want is for some company to come acquire our, technology and then silo that technology
Or screw it up.
Yeah, and I think that's something that always, is on my mind, because it's hard to know who you can trust in healthcare, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, anything in business. I've seen a lot of friends sell companies, and sometimes it goes well, and the acquirer does well by the company, and integrates it well, and the team is happy and the customers are happy. But I've also seen it go the opposite way too many times, where it just totally, team abandons ship due to poor management. The product goes to shit. Customers leave, and it just kind of just, it's like,
look at Twitter. Look at Twitter. Look what's happening with Twitter. You think that everyone would be happy at Twitter. It's a perfect example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right? on a large stage, big scale, large stage. But yeah, exactly.
And it's tough. So I think collaboration and the right fit is always, important. And those things, as long as you built something really robust, there'll be multiple options. We've had multiple options till this day on, all these things that we've spoken about. And at the end of the day, we've chosen to just keep the train running, keep building, and keep, growing.
I mean, that's the sign of a good business. And, as the CEO, having a vision that you're clear on, if you're not getting distracted and swayed by, you're building a good business. So you are getting offers. Obviously, people see what you're doing and there's value there, so they want it. And offers are going to come your way, but you're just like, you see the vision, you're like the horse with blinders on. You're just charging towards, the finish line, or, charging towards the goal. And that's visionary there. This is so cool, man. We had an awesome conversation today, and I was just thinking all this came about because I have a services firm in the Laravel space, as you know. You guys use Laravel in your tech stack. I think I cold emailed you like a year ago or 2 years ago, and we ended up doing work together. Became friends, met in New York. Had pizza, talked about doing this show, and like here we are now recording the episode, and it's so cool how the world works and connections are made. And
it is pretty amazing, actually. Yeah,
I
no,
love it.
thank you, Brian, for everything that you've done for Seqster. And I think you're, from your technological background, you understood, the work that our team is doing, how it can impact things. So we really thank you for, your interest and really understanding like what the team here is really doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there anything you want to plug before we hop off? Obviously, Seqster, we'll have that link in the show notes for anybody who wants to download the apps. We'll put the website and everything.
If anyone's listening in and wants to learn more, or I don't know, maybe you want to have a discussion around how we can help your business if you're in healthcare in any segments, feel free to reach out. Just email us at info@seqster.com. And, I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to make time if it makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, Ardy, we'll put your the info at email. We'll put your LinkedIn link in the show notes and all that stuff. But it's been awesome having you on. I think this is going to be a great episode, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the final version here.
Thanks so much, Brian. So great to have you on and as a host and discussing all the great things that we talked about at the pizza shop to your podcast. Thanks again for all you do.
Yeah, next time you're in New York, we'll meet up and get pizza there again.
100%. We're gonna go with the all meat lovers next time, not the veggie.
There you go, Ardy. All right. Well, have a great rest of your night. I'll see you soon.
All right. Talk to you. Bye.